Welcome to another in our series of Kehillat Israel podcasts. This is a recording of Rabbi Amy Bernstein's weekly Friday morning Torah study.
We are in Parshat Vayera this morning. There's a lot that goes on in this parsha, and it's hard to pick always where to go. So we are in the parsha where there is the wonderful scene of the Annunciation that Sarah is going to conceive. So remember, in every hero narrative, in every hero story, there is the special birth, like the hero's birth is special. And we talked a little bit about Sarai, being a princess, probably originally a Mesopotamian priestess or princess. And so part of the role of the princess and the priestess was to have a ceremonial marriage with a representation of the divine and celebrate fertility that way, and the fertility of the crops and the animals and all of those things. And that was assured by the priestess having relations with the king. And if it's a queen, then with a representation of the god, so with a priest. This was common, and it was performed every year, the marriage ceremony, this holy, experience, this sacred experience. And we have elements of that in the Sarai narrative this week. So we have we have Sarai, if you'll recall, she's captured by Pharaoh, and she's captured by Avimelech. So Sarah is captured twice and is put in the harem of two men who are powerful royal men, and probably some remnants there of the sacred wedding. And then we get this miraculous annunciation by these angels that she's going to have a child, right? So this is another indication that this is a very special situation. This is unique. This involves, again, elements of the divine. And that's important for a hero narrative, and it's certainly important for what would have been the matriarchal stories about Sarai in the neighborhood. Then we get this episode, and we're going to look at the end of the episode today. We get the episode of God telling Avram that God is going to destroy the cities of Sodom and Gommorah because of how wicked they are, how evil they are, the horrible, horrible ways that they're behaving. And if you'll recall, this is in the wake of the story of the Tower of Babel. So really, these are stories, scholars agree that these are stories really coming to talk about the dangers of the city, the dangers of urban life. We are talking about semi-nomadic pastoralists. That's who our ancestors were, semi-nomadic pastoralists, who are always in tension with people who are agriculturally based, because agriculture, your profit comes from excess from what you need from the land, and therefore land ownership becomes very important because the yield of that land is your wealth. For semi-nomadic pastoralists, there is no owning of land, right? The land belongs to itself. The land belongs to everyone. What belongs to you are the cattle and sheep and goats and whatever that you move through different territories, right? And they feed on the land, and that's what belongs to you, the movable stuff, not the land itself. So this was a tension in early Israel when you have Canaanite traditions around semi-nomadic pastoralists and settled agricultural cities or societies. So there's a tension there. We see this, we see the compromise when we get to Pesach, right? You have the New Grain Festival, the Festival of New Grain, and it's partnered with the Lambing Festival. So you have to provide the festival for both of those groups, the semi-nomadic pastoralist folks and the agrarian folks, because there's a real tension there. Because what do people who own land not want? They don't want animals coming and eating their produce, right? So there's a natural, think about it. The movies I grew up with my father watching were all about, right? Like cattle ranchers and like all these tensions around who crossed whose fence and whose, animal did what to whose property and, all guns and horses and all this stuff. So that is very much the vibe, but just put those Westerns back in Canaan. And so you have these natural tensions. We see with the Tower of Babel the same criticism of urbanization. We see the criticism of look who human beings think they are. They can build this huge tower. They're going to try to storm the sky. That they want to make their name great on this tower. We had a conversation about this a while ago about putting names on towers. And that's, kind of what they're aiming for. And that's what they're all about. And that's what they're doing when they work in lockstep together. So let's scatter them so that they're not speaking the same language. They're not all walking in lockstep, because human beings are dangerous when they get together and do that. Not what I think about instead of the Tower of Babel is nuclear weapons, right? When we get together and we build our society, our urban society and our whatever, and now we're gonna be at war with them. When we're all about that, then we can create really, really destructive things. That's what the Tower of Babel symbolizes. So Sodom and Gommorah are two cities that are coming under huge critique from the folks who wrote these stories. Yes, rural versus urban conflict today, absolutely, in terms of resources, in terms of, so many of those issues. And I don't want to stay with the story of Sodom and Gommorah so much today. I've done it before. If you want my take on that story, you can look at past podcasts of this Parsha, because Bert always gives it a title that lets you know something about what I'm talking about. And there's interesting scholarship on what is actually going on with Sodom and Gommorah. It is not homosexual intercourse. That is not the problem. So let's just be clear about that. It is not sodomy that is the problem. That is not what is indicative of how degenerate these cities have become. It is that the people of these cities, the men of these cities, all of them, Torah tells us, are ready to come violate strangers who have been given shelter by hosts in the city. In our case, Lot. Lot takes in 3 strangers, 3 foreigners who have no protection in the ancient world. A stranger, a traveler who was taken in to someone's home is given ultimate protection. That means the host, by taking them in, is willing to give up his own life to defend those guests staying in his home, in his tent. That is the rule of the ancient world, because everyone at some point was going to find themselves traveling, or their kid was going to find themselves traveling. And so the whole rule was, if you took someone in for shelter, they were inviolable, and you would give up your life rather than allow something to happen to them in your home, on your watch. And it's precisely what happens in Sodom and Gommorah. We know that the 3 strangers are in fact malachim, they are angels, but the people of the town don't know that. So they just see them as 3 foreigners, so 3 vulnerable people who don't have connections, who don't have a tribe, who don't have brothers and cousins and uncles who can come, right, take honor revenge, blood revenge for them. That's who's vulnerable in the ancient world. We know this, right? We have these stories everywhere that Avram becomes one of these people in Lech Lecha. He becomes an Ivri, right? He's known as the one who crosses over, who goes and has to be without his people, without his clan. So this is typical. So we totally understand this. Now we're getting a story about how wicked these cities are
And the point of the story is not the destruction of Sodom and Gommorah. That is not the point. Most likely, there is a memory, the same with the flood. There is some memory of towns on fire. That would be absolutely normal. We are told a bit about bitumen, bitumen, around these areas. Bitumen, as you may recall, is flammable. So lightning, anything like that can ignite bitumen. It is possible. There is a memory of cities destroyed by fire related to combustible materials that were everywhere around these cities. And then, of course, you develop a tale about what happened and why. I want to look at the end of that story. And of course, the part of the point of that story for us and telling the story is that Avram argues with God about killing the people of Sodom and Gommorah because not all of them are evil. It can't possibly be that all of them are evil. And will the God of justice not do justly? Right? So that's really the important part of the whole story for us, not what they did wrong, not why they deserved this or why they were wicked, but Avram arguing that a just God cannot kill innocents along with guilty. That, of course, does not come out to be the verdict, turns out. But that's kind of the point of the story for us is Avram's discussion and arguing with God. So who's there? Why does Abraham care about this at all? Who's in that city? Do we remember who's in Sodom? Lot, his nephew, is there. Lot chose this like really, great pasture land and really successful, land and city and all this stuff around it. And Avram went a different direction. And Avram let Lot choose first. So Lot chose. Here's where Lot is. Avram gets the message that the cities are going to be destroyed because of how evil they have become. So Lot is there with his wife and with his sons who had wives, and two daughters who are unmarried. So Lot is there with his family. And we have these malachim who are there, who know what's coming, right? The malachim know what's about to happen to Sodom and Gommorah. And so let's look at what they say to Lot and his family. Genesis 19. Vayomru ha'anashim, and the men say Elot to Lot, Admi lechapo, who else do you have here? Son-in-law and your sons and your daughters, and whoever you have in the city, bring them, hotzei mina makom, bring them out from the place. Now, this is what the wicked folks said to Lot about his guests, the anashim, bring them out, right? That we may do violence to them. And of course, it meant sexual violence because that's the worst thing you can do to a man is non-consensual male penetration. And so bring them out that we might do this to them. And now the Anashim are turning around and saying to Lot, who have you got that's yours that you want to protect? Bring them out from this place. For we will destroy this place because the cry of it is great before Yud-Heh Vav-Heh. And Yud-Heh Vav-Heh has sent us to destroy it. Vayetze Lot, and Lot went out and spoke to his sons-in-law who had married his daughters and said, get up and go away from this place, for Yud-Heh Vav-Heh will destroy the city. But he seemed kemitzachek, as someone playing. We've had mitzachek before, remember? We have who mitzacheks. Mm-hmm.
Well, it was two sons.
Mm-hmm.
Was it Jacob and Ishmael?
It was Ishmael and Yitzchak.
Oh,
right?
Yitzchak.
Good. So Ishmael was mitzacheking with Yitzchak, and Rebecca is mitzacheking with Isaac when they are caught, and then the king understands that they are not brother and sister. And so that is what Lot seems in the eyes of his son-in-law, as a mitzacheker. Okay. And when morning arose, then the angels hurried Lot, saying, "Get up, take your wife and your 2 daughters that are here, or you will be swept away in the iniquity of the city." But he lingered. So we see this very fancy trope mark over this word, he delayed. He lingered. So you see over the mem, you see this trope marking. It is a very, very, very rare trope mark. So there's an article by Rabbi Jonathan Sachs that talks about every place we see this trope sign. And of course, so he explains why we see it here over this word about Lot. So he lingers, and the cantor, or whoever's reading from Torah, as the person reads or chants this word, has this hugely long, melodic whatever to say this word. So the person chanting the word "and he lingered" is lingering on the word, right? That's the point of the cantillation. It's kind of onomatopoeia in a way. It's like the cantillation is extended, and so it becomes exactly what the word means. That I keep saying lingers, but delayed, lingered, didn't want to, didn't know what to do, was kind of stuck, was kind of in between, right? Vayachziku ha'anashim biyado. So the men, who we know are malachim, grab him by his hand, and the hand of his wife, and the hand of his 2 daughters, because God is showing them chemla. God is showing them mercy, compassion, chemla. This is the same word that's used of Pharaoh's daughter when she looks on the infant Moshe in the basket. Chamalta, right? Chamalt aleh. She felt chemla for him. This is the same word now that is used about God on these people, God's children, who is going to save them. And they brought him out and set him outside the city. And it came to pass, when they had brought them out, when the Anashim had brought out Lot and his family, that he said, "Flee for your life, do not look behind you, and do not stay in all the plain. Escape to the mountain, or you will be swept away." Vayomer Lot aleim, al na Adonai. And Lot said to them, "Please know, my lords, if your servant has found favor in your sight, and it is great mercy, your servant has found favor in your sight, and it is great mercy which you have shown me in saving my life, and I cannot escape to the mountain, because evil would take me and I would die. Now this city is near to flee to, and it is a little one. Let me escape to it. Is it not a little one? And my soul shall live." This is a tiny little town. It's just a podunk little nothing. Let me just go hang out there and I'll be safe. Vayomer elav, and he said to him, "I have accepted you concerning this thing, that I will not overthrow the city of which you've spoken." So we're going to leave alone the place where you're going to go find some kind of shelter. Maher, quickly escape there, because I cannot do anything until you are there. So the name of the city was called Zoar. The sun had risen upon the earth when Lot came to Zoar, and Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh caused rain upon Sodom and Gommorah of brimstone and fire from Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh Mina Shemayim, from out of heaven. This is where we think it might be lightning, some other kind of, something that is igniting the bitumen. Vayahafoch et harim, right? And overturns the cities and all the plain and all the inhabitants of the cities and everything that grew upon the ground. So now it's a remnant back, right, to destruction. we keep seeing this pattern, right? That God keeps trying to figure out how we can have a humanity that doesn't destroy itself and doesn't bring down destruction on everything around it. But what happens? V'tabet ishto me'acharav. But his wife looked back from behind him. Nitziv melach. And she becomes, we've talked about this verb a lot, right? Nitzavim, atem nitzavim kulchem hayom. She becomes a standing still monument, melach of salt.
Pillar.
A pillar. Okay, a pillar of salt. Okay. And now we're going to get a whole nother thing with Avraham and seeing the destruction of Sodom and Gommorah. Let's look at Sachs, who's talking about the shalshelet. He's talking about this trope mark, the shalshelet, over the word he hesitated, that Lot hesitated. And he says, Lot's hesitation goes to the core of his identity. We recall that earlier when he and Avraham agreed to separate to end the quarrel between their herdsmen, Lot looked up and saw the whole plain of the Jordan was well watered, like the garden of Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, like the land of Egypt, toward Zoar. So Lot chose for himself the whole plain of the Jordan and set out toward the east. He chose to make his home in Sodom, despite the fact that, as the Torah already states at this point, its inhabitants were wicked and were sinning greatly against Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. When we see Lot in chapter 19, what we just read, he and his family have already become profoundly assimilated. His daughters have married local men. On the phrase at the beginning of the chapter, Lot was sitting in the gateway of the city, the sages say that he had just been appointed as a judge. The gate of the city being the place where in Abrahamic times the judges and elders sat to resolve disputes. Lot does not see himself, as did Avraham, as a stranger and temporary resident. He has decided to put down roots in the Jordan Valley and the cities of the plain. This is henceforth where he belongs, so much so that the visitors have physically to drag him away. Lot's sense of belonging, however, is either naivete or self-deception. The text makes this clear at 3 points. The first is the attempted sexual assault on Lot's visitors. Evidently, the people of Sodom do not take kindly to strangers. This is the first hint that perhaps Lot, too, is in their eyes a stranger, right? Like, why, when it's absolutely forbidden to, attack strangers if they're under the protection of someone from the city, why would they have gone after Lot's guests? Possibly, it's already telling us something about Lot's status in the town, that he's in fact still perceived of as a stranger, even though he doesn't perceive himself that way. Okay. This is the first, the Torah in its second indication is brutally explicit. Get out of our way, they said to Lot. We didn't read this part. They said, this fellow came here as an alien, meaning Lot, as a stranger, as a foreigner, and now he wants to play the judge. We'll treat you worse than them. Okay. Another indication, which I never paid attention to before, that Lot is sitting in the gates, so he's a big shot, he's a judge, but when they come to get the strangers from his home to do what they want, to be, violent as a mob, what do they say about Lot? This one thinks he's a judge. He came here a foreigner, a stranger, and now he thinks he's a big shot. Well, guess what? We're going to do worse to you, people who think you're all that, when you came here as strangers, as foreigners. We're going to do worse to you than the foreigners. Interesting. The third comes when he tells his daughter's husbands that they must escape because the city's about to be destroyed, but his sons-in-law thought he was a metzacheker. Lot's elaborate new identity is about to come crashing down about him, not only because of the impending destruction, but because he has discovered in successive blows that he has not been accepted in this place. Sodom hates strangers, and they still consider Lot an alien, and his sons-in-law regard him as a fool. Yet despite this, he hesitates. He has invested too much of himself in the project of making his home among the people of the plain. He is a prime example of what Leon Festinger calls cognitive dissonance. According to Festinger, the need to avoid dissonance is fundamental to human beings. Otherwise, it creates unbearable tension. It is this tension that Lot cannot resolve, and which is signaled by the shashelet over the word he hesitated. It was the ultimate existential question, who am I? Having tried so hard to become one of them, he finds it almost impossible to tear himself away. There were tragically many Jews in Germany and Austria in the 1930s who refused to leave because they could not or would not believe the evidence around them that Hitler was serious in his threats to destroy the Jews. Incidentally, Festinger's theory also explains the behavior of Lot's wife, who looked back against the specific instruction of the angels and was turned into a pillar of salt. Festinger calls this syndrome post-decision dissonance. He predicted that the more important the issue, the longer the person delays a decision and the harder it is to reverse, the more he or she will agonize over whether they have made the right choice. They have second thoughts, they need reassurance, they look back. The shalshelet over Lot's hesitation is no mere detail of the biblical text. It is, in a real sense, the story of the modern Jew. Entering mainstream society for the first time and yet encountering overt or covert anti-Semitism, many 19th century European Jews became ambivalent about their identity. They tried to hide it and to assimilate. They became secular Marranos. It did not work. The more they strove to be like everyone else, the more conspicuous they were, and the stronger anti-Semitism grew. They themselves lost much in the process, not only their Jewish heritage itself, but also the simple capacity to know and take pride in who they were. The lives of Lot and Abraham exemplify for all time the contrast between ambivalence and the security that comes from knowing who one is and why. Lot, who tried to become someone else, found himself regarded by his neighbors as an alien, an arriviste, an interloper, a parvenu. To his own sons-in-law, he was a joker. Abraham lived a different kind of life. He fought a war on behalf of his neighbors. He prayed for them, but he lived apart, true to his faith, his mission, and his covenant with God. What did they think of him? Early in next week's Sedra, the Hittites call him a prince of God in our midst. I'm going to say this spoke to me a lot about kind of the situation a lot of us find ourselves in right now, of course. But it's not as simple as are we Avraham or Lot. I just don't believe that. I don't believe that we are naive like the Jews of Germany and Austria who didn't leave because they didn't believe it was possible. I'm not saying that. I'm also not saying that, so what am I saying? Just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you. I think we find ourselves between the Avraham and Lot, the way Sachs wants to put it forward, right? Avraham says, I know I'm other. I know I'm Ivri. I know that. And always knows that, right? But yet argues for Sodom and Gommorah not to be destroyed, but doesn't confuse himself with someone who is in the land. And if you'll recall, he buys a cave at Machpelah to bury Sarai, then Sarah, right? He buys that cave and they're like, oh, no. We'll give it to you. And he says, nuh-uh, I'm going to purchase it. Right? Because he doesn't want to owe anybody any favors because he's not from there. He's not a native. He doesn't own land. He needs to own that cave. He needs to own land there to have a certain status because he's not from there. So Abraham is always aware that he's not of the place. Lot made the opposite assumption that he was of the place, according to Sachs, and that's The problem for Lot is that he was seen as an outsider, as a foreigner, even as he's sitting as a judge in the town. So you Jews who think you are all that because you're successful doctors and lawyers and professors and judges, you think you're safe because the president's son is married to one of you? It's going to be worse for you. When they come for you, it's going to be even worse because you had the pretension to believe that you somehow now were a complete part of this society. I think we are feeling some of that, right? I think we are experiencing some of that, which I never thought to experience here in this country in my lifetime. It's very disheartening. It's very distressing. But I have to say, since, we've been talking about this since October 7th, that there are people that we thought we were completely aligned with, that we had fought on their behalf and thought that it would be mutual and that when we were in trouble, they would show up for us. And many of us who have found ourselves, people who were at home and comfortable on the far left, because we were marginalized in many ways. Judaism was just part of it, whether we were gay, whether we were female, whether we were whatever it was, we were on the other side and allied ourselves with the oppressed and with the marginalized and with the minorities, and thought we were fully integrated into that community. I'm speaking obviously very much from my own experience right now. I'm not trying to project this onto anybody. And so I don't know, the explanation of this story spoke to me a lot from Sachs's perspective about the chutzpah of believing that you truly belong when, if you don't keep a healthy dose of then you're going to be really shocked when it turns out you don't belong in the ways that you thought, right? And like I've told you before, at the Dyke March, when, you're not allowed to march with a rainbow flag with a Jewish star on it, right? So am I more lesbian or more Jew? Like that's just crazy. That is crazy to me that could happen in my lifetime. That my family, my allies, my co-oppressed people, right, turned on me as a Jew, identified me as other because I'm a Jew. That is the moment Sachs is talking about here, and it's the moment that we have been dealing with since October 7th. And just, Tamara, it was when they said that women couldn't march in the march with a gay flag that had a Jewish star on it. They were drummed out. All right. So is that Alexis who has her hand up? Alexis?
So is this a warning? Like, it is so disheartening and distressing, because when we think of a community, can we never truly be in community with people other than us? Do we always have to be watching our backs?
Yeah.
Which was like the antithesis, by the way, of how I was raised in this country.
Yes.
And those were different times, but
yes.
it was so fundamental to my beliefs as an educator, particularly as someone who educates students from all over.
Yes. That's exactly why it spoke to me today, not in a good way, but I brought it forward because I think Sachs, in talking about why this trope sign is over this word, and he hesitated, is because that's exactly, Alexis, what I think Sachs is describing is exactly what you're talking about. We're in this moment of hesitation that is existential. We grew up thinking we were part of Sodom and Gommorah. That's how I was taught, right? That we were fully integrated into this society. My father served in Korea. In Okinawa, he served in the Korean War. and was very proud of being right in the service, very proud of serving his country, and said it could never happen here. Never. And I was raised to believe that we were full members of the American society, that this country was the exception. From its inception, we were considered equal citizens. Well, if you were a white man who owned land and were Jewish, then you were an equal citizen and could vote and all of that. And that had never happened before. And that proves American exceptionalism. And that is what all of us grew up with.
Yeah, but really, like, when you really unpack that, there's never been that in this country, right? I mean, yes, it was I think you touched on the privilege, right? If you're white, male, but that's never been the actual case here. I mean, to its full extent. And I would argue also that naively, it was before October 7th. October 7th was just just punched us in the face. It's been percolating. It's always been there, but especially on both sides, the right and the left. And I think, as you were saying, it's the left that was most shocking, because from the right, it's always been there.
Right.
But when I was at the Black Lives Matter march, and then I see a Jew, sign with a Jew depicted as horns, it just was so eye-opening. And I was so upset with myself that here I thought I was going, in solidarity. And not to say that the people who had that sign represented everybody, but it was very eye-opening.
That's right. And that is exactly this moment, I think, that Sachs sees happening for Lot, is that it is fundamental to his understanding of his identity that we are experiencing now. This kind of wait. This is not just moving from one place to another. This is, wait a minute. I'm still regarded as not part of this society like I thought I was. That cancellation mark only happens 3 times in the Torah. And so this is a critical, I guess what I liked about this commentary is that it takes this moment and it completely identifies the pain and the the existential inability to kind of move, to kind of figure it out. We can't wait. What? Both are true at the same time, but they're completely oppositional. And this is what he was talking about, cognitive dissonance. We cannot tolerate that level of dissonance. We can't. You can't live like that. I'm safe
it's
here,
also the
or
truth,
I'm completely not safe here, and I'm not.
Yeah.
Right? I'm a Jew. I'm not an American. Whatever. So that kind of dissonance is just intolerable for us as human beings, and we need to resolve it. But it's sitting in this moment that I find myself in, and I think we as a community find ourselves in. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about Lot's wife after this in terms of the fires, and kind of what's happening for me on the more personal level about that whole issue of looking back at what's burning that has
Rabbi
been
Amy,
our home.
It sounds like also this idea of what you said, the touched on multiple truths can exist at the same time, but what truth do we want to believe? I just happen to be rereading Everything is Illuminated. And, there's this whole depiction, a story told about the shuttle, and that the people in the shuttle knew what was coming, but they chose to just believe otherwise. They knew. And so it's this undercurrent, as Jews, how could we naively just create a reality that really might not be true? Because it's easier to live in the non-truth, perhaps. I don't know.
I think that's the cancellation mark. I think you just hit it on the head, right? This kind of, we don't know which is true. There's cognitive dissonance that we don't know, and he's stuck in, I believe, you just articulated beautifully what Sachs is saying is happening for Lot, that is happening for us right now. We're in this kind of, we don't know which is true, but it feels dissonant, and it feels like it's pulling us apart. At the core of our identities, I'm putting this in here. I'm not saying it's y'all, but that's been my experience of our community. Many people have articulated this to me, and I've felt it myself, like since October 7th. All right, Bert, I'm going to let you speak, and then Tamara and Judith.
I look at the pausing also from a very personal level, and that is we live in a society where any one of us can really pass.
Package of nuts.
Non-Jewish. And the pausing is also a question of, am I really going to identify as Jewish? Is Jewish who I am? Or am I kind of like hyphenated, not sure, floating out somewhere? What's going on? And it presents us, I think, with having to make a decision a lot of us don't want to make. And that is, how am I really going to identify? How am I going to, without getting into politics, but how am I going to react to the election of a New York mayor who could possibly be anti-Semitic? How am I going to react, to the right wing of the Republican Party refinding its anti-Semitic roots? Am I going to react by trying to pass, by looking the other way? Or is that going to just make me feel more Jewish and more determined to be who I am? The fact of the matter is, we are who we are. I was born who I was born, and I can't pretend otherwise.
Right. Thank you, Bert. Good. Another articulation of the sharsheret. Sharsheret? I don't know which one it is. Tamara.
Yeah, I was going to speak along the lines of Bert, just in how this relates to the politics that are going on in this world right now. I mean, I know we're talking about anti-Semitism and who we are as Jews, and beyond even Republican, Democrat, it's like, who are we as people and as believers in democracy? Like, what are we going to do? What are we going along with? How much are we going to hesitate? That's, I think, also ripping us apart. It's certainly ripping me apart.
Yeah. Judith? And then Helene?
Okay. I was just going to add that for converts, I think this is a feeling that we undergo in all kinds of times. Oh, you're not really a Jew. And I've heard that so many times. How would you know you're not Jewish? It's a constant feeling, not just an occasional political upheaval kind of feeling. And it's very sad to me to have that happen over and over.
Yeah. Thanks, Judith. Helene?
On a personal note, I've been like to say that I've been wearing my Star of David and my yellow pin for the hostages who are, unfortunately, there are 6 remains of people who are still in Gaza. So I'm having conversations, mostly with Jews. Non-Jews, I've been avoiding this conversation, but it just seems like so many Jews, for the first time that I can remember, are really overtly hiding their Jewishness because of a fear of radical right anti-Semitism and, unfortunately, the left anti-Semitism that's coming out in this country. And they don't really know where they belong. And it just seems to be, it just seems to be so much more overt since October 7th. I mean, it was a real shocker. It was a real kick in the gut to me that my friends, my non-Jewish friends, our acquaintances, just weren't there. And so many of the movements, Black Lives Matter, you name it, it just weren't there. So where are we now? Where are we as a people? Where am I as an individual? It is very disconcerting.
Yeah. And also I want to add to that, we are having tensions within the Jewish world about this as well. There are
Absolutely.
so many Jews who, like one person who's not even from our community, who's like from a different part of the country, wrote me after we voted to leave the Reconstructionist movement, saying how concerned she was that I was supporting splitting the Jewish people and further fracturing the Jewish people. And I wrote back, I said, our decision was about the fact that we experienced walking away from half the world's Jewish population who live in Israel, that saying we're anti-Zionist means, that we'll support walking away. That's fracturing the Jewish people. Saying we're willing to cut the Jewish people in half and instead stand with people who, some of them are anti-Zionists, as a way of staying together. Like, wait, what? Like, I am so confused. But that she was very clear that I was supporting fracturing the Jewish people. And I'm like, wow, that we're living in a time where not only are we as Jews not clear, like, wait, what the heck is going on? But then within the Jewish world, right, we're accusing each other of fracturing the Jewish people further within ourselves.
Yeah.
And like, I truly don't know what to do with that. I saw a picture of somebody I love and respect, a teacher of mine who I love and respect deeply, in the media, standing next to Mamdani, supporting him as a candidate. And I don't know what to do with that. And I'm not being smart or sarcastic. I'm serious when I say I don't know what to do with that. This is someone I respect and admire, who's a rabbi, who's my teacher. And I'm like, I honestly don't know what to do with it. And I don't know how I feel about what's going to be with Mamdani. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's already in the Jewish people that people want to write a letter saying, condemning his candidacy. And why isn't there more of an outcry from the Jewish world about his candidacy? And Jews are standing with him on the front page of newspapers. I'm concerned both about our larger Shalshelet moment here and our inner one as the Jewish people being pulled in two different directions about all of this, existential dissonance that we're feeling. Alex?
But isn't what you're articulating part of the Jewish experience anyway? I mean, that's the human condition. We always conflict and disagreement and questioning? I mean, hasn't that been sort of the undercurrent anyway of what it means to be a Jew?
For sure.
And human?
But I don't think we have ever seen this level of fracture, of split in the Jewish world when both are claiming to remain Jewish.
Right.
Maybe as a reform movement was the first response to Orthodoxy. Maybe that was one of those moments. We're not going to wear kippah. We're not going to wear talit. We're not going to have Hebrew. Maybe
what about in the Pale?
Maybe that was as big a moment as this. I don't know. But for each of us to claim our Judaism and to say that the other is anti-Jewish, I don't know. I don't remember even hearing about it. I know we've had inner clashes, but I don't know. Something feels different to me about folks who say to be Jewish is to stand with these people over here who are okay standing against half the Jewish people. I don't think that's ever happened before. Rachel?
I was just going to share a positive. It's been so much for me distress, which is, when I asked the KIPP students to sort of reflect on what they've learned from October 7th about themselves and about other people.
She's talking about our teenagers who are in the philanthropy program, and Alex has wonderfully donated her time to leading a group of our teenagers in that process, the K'ayitza Dakatians. Go ahead.
Sorry. What I was going to say is so many of them, and it aligned with how I felt, was though, we are all shocked, fear, all that. It's like it's never brought us closer, even though we're divided. But the teens wanting to be in community with fellow Jews and more connected to their Jewish identity than ever. So, it's hard to say there's any sort of silver lining, but it certainly compelled me to revisit my connection to my faith, my peers, my people. So it really awakened, as I said, so much. Yes, of course, the distress, but also what does it mean to be Jewish right now at this current moment in time?
Okay. Thank you. Rachel,
and you do kindly pay me to work with the team. So thank you, Rabbi Amy.
What we pay is not anywhere near what someone like you does. Anyway, Rachel.
Rabbi, when you talk about this level of fracturing, my comparison is not to the the Beit Midrash tradition, right? And the kind of like arguing for the sake of God, but rather baseless hatred and the destruction of the temple.
Yeah.
Is where my mind goes.
Yeah.
And that is very distressing, because at the same time that we have enemies without, it's that enemy within that in a way almost scares me more, because it's really at a time like this, like wherever the anti-Semitism is coming from, whether it's masked as anti-Zionism, and I'm not willing to give over that every anti-Zionism, I mean, there are Haredi Jews that are anti-Zionist, right? I mean, we know all that, right? But so much of it now is masked as really it's anti-Semitic, right? When we could be so powerful, this could be our like Jeremy Corbyn moment, right? Like where we unite and fight against like these forces, and we use it as an opportunity to educate and all the rest. And instead we're so fractured, are we going to be able to do that? So I think it's actually the enemy within that scares me more or as much as that enemy without.
Yeah. I think that's a moment we're experiencing for sure. Lisa?
I have a dark view. This is sort of worrying me. Both my daughters live in New York, so they're both New York voters now. These are millennials. They both voted with great enthusiasm for Mamdani. Mm-hmm. And because he's young and fresh and saying things that their generation is concerned with. Mm-hmm. And so when I say, I have some concerns about this guy, I don't know either. I'm a little bit, my jury is out on him too. I don't know. Clearly he is anti-Israel, but I don't know what that has to do with New York City. But I think it does color the atmosphere of anti-Jewishness in this country. And I don't think my daughters are able or willing to see that, because I think we are now one generation down from our generation that grew up with this sense of safety. And this is what we taught our kids, that they are really safe. I mean, we sent them off to colleges all over the country, as our parents sent us, where we intermingled with non-Jews like it was the most natural thing. Our parents didn't necessarily do that or couldn't do that. And these kids are totally at home in a non-Jewish world, and they don't hear the little worries that we hear. I was saying, in the VOD the other day, they don't hear the dog whistles. And in some ways, I think they're more vulnerable to what might be coming than even we are. They are not hearing that they should hesitate. And it really worries me, because I don't know what to say to them. Be worried, be paranoid. They're hearing a lot of positives. And I hate to think that the day will come when they feel that gut punch, of betrayal. It has come. Maybe the guy is wonderful. I don't know.
And this is right there in the Torah text. I think when it says that his sons-in-law looked at him like a mitzacheker, like you're crazy, yeah. Like you're like, right, you're nuts. Like that's just not reality. I think that's exactly right. That tension too between the generations is there. Yeah. Right? About, not taking it seriously because they come from a completely different context in some ways, because of the blessings we have known in this country and in this society, and in, I would say, in Western liberal, orders, which is, of course, what happened in Germany too.
Right.
You know, out of the Western liberal order comes a totalitarian state that then looks for the scapegoat of the Jews.
Yeah.
I do want to look at this moment where again, Yael Shy points out this moment of he tarried, right? And then they kind of drag him out. Lot clings to the reality he knows, even when it is no longer serving him, even when his house is literally surrounded by evil and on the brink of destruction. In a moving and beautiful display of compassion, the angels take the family by the hand and forcibly remove them from their city. It is that hard to leave behind the familiar and venture into the unknown. In order to truly let go of something, a place, a habit, a relationship, my experience is that we have to be willing to allow grief to fill the empty space of whatever it is we let go. My friend and Zen priest, Greg Snyder, says that grief is one of the heart's natural responses to impermanence. Mourning losses, even the loss of something that wasn't serving us, is necessary in order to move through the world. Resisting feeling that grief is what causes us to cling, like Lot and his wife, to the past, feeling stuck and unable to move forward. Lot's wife exemplifies that stuckness in one of the most vivid metaphors in the entire Torah. So then she's the one who quoted Sachs that this is post-decision dissonance, right? And then she keeps looking back. She became a pillar, an unmoving, solid structure. She became salt, an element that when put on the earth does not allow new life to grow. She was literally frozen in indecision and regret, as so many of us are at different points in our lives. That, for me, was a really important part of this teaching as we come to the end of our time together, is that both at this big level, this existential level of where we are, like in this country right now, in the world community, and then just thinking about my own stuckness. My home burned down, and part of me like is constantly looking back, like for all the stuff I lost, all the stuff that's gone, all the memories, all the notes from my daughter, all of everything, every single thing with Judy's handwriting on it is gone. Like there's a part of me that just can't get it, right? And can't let go of the fact that I don't have my house, a house. I don't have a house. I have Lonnie's house, thank God, a million times over. I don't have a house. Like, what? It's like sometimes I come back to that and go, I can't stop looking right over my shoulder at the burning residue of a life. But that also includes, it's hard to not look back at a life that included Judy Griffith being alive. I've known her my whole life. Like it's all of these things that it's hard for us to let go and to move forward, even when it doesn't serve for us to keep looking back because we just get stuck. We ossify. If we can't let go and move forward, we ossify, and new life can't grow where the earth has been salted. I think that's a really important insight. She doesn't turn to a pillar of stone. She turns to a pillar of salt, the anti-life, right? The anti-growth thing. She turns into a statue of that. And so I think for me, I just want to take out, as we close our time together, this notion that I want to be careful not to ossify. And so that means allowing grief. That means, according to, Yael Shy, that's kind of the point of the Torah portion, is the angels pull them forward, right, into something else because it's so hard to let go. And that if we keep turning back around and staying in this dissonance, then we can't build something new. We can't build new life. We can't build a new future. We can't help our young people build a future here that's worthy of what America can and should be, what the Jewish people can and should be. And I'm going to take as our closing teaching that we have to figure out how to grieve, how to really grieve what we need to grieve, that American exceptionalism is done. Our illusion that American exceptionalism was for real, our illusion about that is over.
But we also have to look for our angels.
That's right. That's exactly right. We need to look for the messengers who are going to take us by the hand and drag us out of the smoke and ash and say, okay, yeah, American exceptionalism is burning. Okay, yes, your house, it's gone. Yep, someone who was, a mentor and teacher and partner for you your whole life is gone. Yes, that's what happens. That's the nature of impermanence. Now, what is the message that's going to pull us forward? That is our work, people, to look for the anashim, to look for the messengers, to look for the message that's going to pull us forward. That is how we do right by those young people we raised to go out there and say, this is their country, this world is their world, they belong here fully. That's how we help them build what's possible.
You've been listening to Rabbi Amy Bernstein's Friday morning Torah study from Kehillat Israel in Pacific Palisades, California. For more information, go to our website, www.ourki.org.